OK，
Hello.
敬爱的总议会会读，还有所有的退休的牧者长辈，
Okay, I'm bringing us
一
to
季
do
的
this
会
part of
友，
the
还有
translations.
所有的牧者同工，所有的会友代表，
Okay, we would like
还有
to
我们的
welcome all
来
our
宾，大家
representatives.
下午好，主里平安。
Good evening, Shalom.
这是我第一次，
This is
很
my
多的
first
事情
time.
都很生疏啊。
A lot of things are unfamiliar to
祝福
me.
我这个一年来的
Thank you all for all the encouragements and supports for this year.
抱歉的话，
Okay, I would like to
这
say
个
some words of
上
appreciations
帝
and
这一年的
apology.
带领，我感
Thank you,
觉
Lord, for His
重新
guidance.
学习走路，
I
依
learned,
靠
it
神
felt
的
like
信
I
心，
need to learn
一
everything
步
from the
一脚
beginning
步
again on
适
how
应
to
这
walk,
新的岗位任务。
how to
第
get
二，
used to
我
these
要感谢
positions.
总议会的会读的指引，各个
I
教会
also would like to
来自
thank
各
you
地
for
信
Bishop
息复原的
Jayakumar and
灵
all
性
the
会长。
DSs
第
for
三，
all
我要感
the
谢所有的前
supports.
任会长、牧者
I also would like to
以及
thank you
第
for
四
all the
任
Bishop
和
Emeritus, for all the
第四十任。
presidents,
我告诉
for
你，
all the
我自己
encouragements.
都不知道，你们为什么要把我推上这个岗位？
Okay, I'm also not
到
sure
如今我是觉得莫名其
why
妙，
I am
但是
serving
你们
as
默默的
bishop,
你们默
but
默的
really
支
thank
持
you for
还有
all
带导，
your
对我来说是
encouragements and
莫
your
大的支
prayers.
持。
It's
总
truly
之
a blessing to
也
me.
没有办法退后了，我
So
接
in
下来
short,
厚着脸皮，
I will
继续
continue. The,
尽我能力
there's
的
no
服侍。
turning back, so I will
另外呢，
continue
我要
to
说几句
serve.
抱歉的话，
I would like to
我一定
apologize
要
as
向
well.
大家说声抱歉，因为在处理许多的
I
事物，
apologize
需
in
要
terms
顾
of
及各
how
种
I
不同
deal
的因素，
with many
因此
matters
有
due
时
to a
候
lot of
不能按大
considerations.
家的心意，
So there are
但
times
是
that I
我
cannot
做到
satisfy
大
everyone
家
on my
都满
methods
意的地步。
that
但是
you
呢，
agree with
我还
me.
是希望大家能够看到
But
整
here I
体
would
的
still
情
like
况，
to
还有整体
express that
的
we can see the
能
whole
够
big picture,
一起的，虽然不合你的心意，但是
even
为
though
了
it
教
doesn't
会的好
pleasing
处，
to
为了
you,
神的荣
but for
耀，
the
我们
benefits
大
of
家
the
一起
church,
手
for
牵
the
手。
glory of God, let us
那
continue
么
to hold
开
hands,
始
hold
我
hands
要跟大
and
家
serve the Lord.
分享两个悲剧的引言。1998年呢，5级强度的米字台
Now,
风
I would like to
袭来
share
多
there's
州，
two tragedy.
导致
First one
洪
is on
荒失
1990 end.
11000至少
Uh,
11000人丧生。
there are many
这是
people who
很
have
恐怖的
passed
事情。
away
台
due
风
to
有
the
35万
hurricane.
五千间的房子，另外呢，
So we have
超过
35,000
10万人，
houses
有
has been
150
destroyed
150万人因而无家可归，
and
这个国
150,000 who
家
have
人
lost
口的
their
2成。
home of
洪都
staying.
拉斯的经济发展，根据他们的调查，
So this is indeed
衰
a
退了
major
50
tragedy
年。
for
这
50
是非
years.
常恐怖的事情。
So
现
this
在
is a
呢，
scary
再
moment.
看这个桥啊，就是这
So
个
this is the
呃
picture
超
of
速
the
客
before and
桥
after hurricane.
前跟后。照样的，我们今天另外一个悲剧是什么呢？就是新冠肺炎，出乎意料的影响了我们的生活。
So this has really
会
affected
导
our
致
life.
急性严重的呼吸系统重症。
So this
他
is
首
like
先
such
在
as this
2019年
pandemic. At the
12
same
月
time,
在中国
since
武汉确诊，
2019
4
started
号
from
24
China,
日
Wuhan.
正月也宣布国际公共卫生紧急关注项
So
目。
it has been
同年
announced
3月11号被宣布为
same year
大流行
in
病。
2019 that this is truly a
但是到
pandemic
2021年
until
8
year
月30号，
2021.
我借稿的时候，我都没有再去更新我的数目了。
I've not
这个
updated,
存
followed
病
the
例到那
schedule.
时候8月份的时候已经超过2.14亿，而且
So
死亡人数已经超过
many
1
lives
万。
has been taken away
我想
through this
这个时候
COVID-19.
我
We are being
看那个
affected greatly.
那个总人数，我相信那个数目更大了。
And
这
so,
个
yeah.
疫情啊，堪称是史上其
So
中
this
最致
pandemic
命的流行
has
病，
been claimed
影
as
响
one
了
of the
世界，晃
deadliest
了
pandemic that have
全球
affected
社
the
交和
world,
经济。
that
而且
affected the
是
economy, the
经
social
济大
aspects.
萧条之后的最大全球衰退。
This is a
这
global
个两大
crisis.
悲剧呢，
These
它
two
直接
major
的改
tragedy
变了
changed
我们的生活。
changed our life.
台风米字摧毁力大，
Even though the hurricane was very great, but this Chalutaka Bridge still hold on. So this is an encouragement in our heart. It's a questions. It's such a big contrast. How much it has affected the surrounding, but the bridge is still holding on. This Chalutaka Bridge, it's 484 meters. It was built in the 80s. It is a miracle. So many other bridges has been destroyed, but Chalutaka Bridge continued without any damage. In fact, Chalutaka, the river has already changed its direction. So that is why we can see there's a land underneath of the bridge instead of the river, because the river has changed its directions. So it's the same thing like our COVID-19 has truly affected and shifted our directions in our life. Our physical meeting has been changed to virtual meetings, working from home, and through technology, it has already been part of our life in this new norm. So, brothers and sisters, this is not just any other example, but it's not in my script. For example, Nokia. So 20 years back, when we start to touch mobile phone, what brand is it? It is Nokia 3310. Is Nokia your phone right now? Are you using Nokia? Now, during that time, 8 out of 10 are using Nokia. But Nokia is just like this Chalutaka Bridge, so strong, solid ground founded. But in 21st century, Apple started to rise up. So it's taking over the whole markets of mobile phones. Until today, so many years had passed, Nokia was not able to overtake Apple. We have so many this kind of example. But I want to say today it's what kind of bridge that we want to build. We have to build a bridge to nowhere. Not a bridge that go nowhere. All right. In order for us to stay alive in this pandemic, we need to come out from our zone, be creative. So in other words, all the ministries that we have planned must be able to build bridges to connect to others. We must recite this in our heart. We must, even though Chalutaka Bridge we must ensure that the bridge of the church still connect people, connect to their needs, and guiding them towards Jesus Christ. We do not just build any kind of bridge. We also don't build bridges that look fancy for those that have long traditions or experience. But what's about it? But if it doesn't connect with tourists, so that is why we need to learn from the Bible. We need to depend on God's wisdom so that we can spread the gospel to lead them to Christ completely. This pandemic has strongly, greatly affected us. But there is a good news. When we look back to the church history, we have never been affected by this pandemic. And now the church is going beyond the four walls, and we are connecting many new people. This is the most exciting moment for church. And at the same time, pandemic has changed the traditions of the church from physical change to virtual. And we also have a new way to enter into ministry. So in history, we also observe that when persecution comes, churches grew stronger. Despite of many challenges or persecutions, so we must look beyond our crisis and make it into opportunity. I want to show you so this is another way for me to express what I shared this evening. If we want to use one word to summarize my sharing, yes, connect. We need to connect with people. We must connect with God, and we must connect with skills and heart. Now we're looking at the first point, connect people. Now the bridge has to connect people from different sides. The purpose of bridge is to draw closer for different sides of people. So every year we have a lot of figures and reporting, but the stories behind the figures, we must look beyond from the statistics, some of the opportunity for those who can be trained, for those who need to be cared. So we must look beyond the figures that we have accepted. And secondly, we must cultivate love. So despite of social distancing, we need to look at how we can cultivate love and care towards one another. This is the part that we can never neglect. So how can we cultivate this beautiful relationship? And we must also plant our resources. We must plan our resources. Previously, we have a lot of resources in terms of manufacture. But because of this pandemic, it has revealed to us that we have to replan our resources so that we can connect with people through resources, through our ministerial team, our ministry, our infrastructures building. We should not waste our resources. We need to make use of all our resources. We also need to examine our spiritual gift. We are learning to building relationship with one another, and everyone have different gifts, talent, and experience that we can connect with the society better. So how can we help our members to connect with one another through their gifts? So what we have learned is we shouldn't be doing things within the wall. We need to think that we can connect with our neighbor, with our society, with our surrounding. Only by then we can respond to the first commandment. Now we also need to look at what is the core values of what we have been doing. Is it long lasting? Why do we need this church? Or why do we need this ministry? We must dare to challenge and ask these questions. For example, like this place, what does it make a difference if there's no church? Do we dare to ask these questions? We must ask that why is there so many church, but members are still willing to come to our church? We need a very convincing reason. What is the core value of our ministry? How can we achieve what God has asked us to do? So these are some of the reflections, the questions. What is the core values of our church? Secondly, we need to connect with God. Begin from God. We need to connect with God. So this is a saying, leaders were always busy with their ministries, but they've neglected to spend time with God. So that is why they are tired. They've lost their focus. So this is what Augustine have said. If our heart do not find rest and peace in God, we will not be able to find rest.
Our heart restless until it rests in God. 所以我们如果没有跟神连接，我们永远就是漂浮的，非常。
We need to connect with God.
我们忙是很忙，但是
we are busy, but at times we're busy without a purpose. How can we stand still in spite of all our busyness in serving God? How can we stand still? Only one solution. That is where we must be rooted upon our relationship with God. So this saying, it's whereby
下面一句话，这个翻译的倒转了哈，应该是说，在主里安歇是保全有效基督徒生命唯一的途径，因为我们的生命 ，OK，our being must come before our work, our doing。我们的生命跟神的生命、跟神的关系
，our life and God's life, our relationship has to be before our work. So this is where we can see when Jesus visited Martha and Mary. So it's not a debate on who's are important. So that is why when we say our calling upon has to be rooted on our relationship with God. The deeper our relationship with God is, the more strength we can attain from God to serve others. We must focus our relationship with God. So in terms of our spiritual discipline, it's not just about the ending fruit, but it is more on our relationship.
Of spiritual formation is not detaching from the world, but a process to be conformed to the likeness of Christ for the sake of others. 这是灵性塑造最终的结果。为着别人的缘故，我们本来脾气
So
很
this is where spiritual formations, for the benefits of others, we learn to be like Jesus.
为着爱别人，
Because of loving others, when we were used to be selfish, but because of others, we learn like Jesus to practice self-sacrificial. This is the main purpose of spiritual formation.
我们事工的核心，在你的
So there are some questions in your serving, in your ministry,
整份你的心。每一天早上，不论你是牧者
in your leadership, in your ministry, any things that has given you,
你想起教会的时候
um,
你要问一句话 ：What excites you today？
yes, what excites you?
今天是什么东西振奋你？
We need to ask these questions in our leadership and
比如说
ministry.
祷告会
What are the things that excite you?
还有比如说你说去探访，
For example, some people say prayer meeting,
这些
some people say
如果
visitation.
这个推动你去教会侍奉上帝，那很好。但是疫情来了，你说
Maybe we say those are some of the programs. Because of pandemic, all these are not able to carry on. But does the church provide online prayer meeting or online visitation?
那么还有没有什么东西可以振奋你的心呢？
So is there any other thing that can excite you?
真正振奋我们的心的
So the real
这些事
motivations that excites us is not about our ministry.
当然很好。
We give thanks.
我们
Shall we have ministry that excites us?
这个去探索到最后的时候，
When we source for the
能
root,
够振奋我们
the
每
root
一位
cause,
的时刻，
the root motivations
无论什么
that
环境
excites us despite of all our environment and surrounding,
振奋我们心的弟兄姊妹，是主耶稣基督
the real
Christ alone
Christ alone that can excite us.
no matter what regardless of our circumstances and situations 推动的因素是什么使你持续得着力量
So these are some of the other questions.
毫不颓丧
What makes us continue to
紧紧自我抱负
promote the event?
时候是你的 ambition
Sometimes it is because of our ambitions.
自愿或者是抱负
Sometimes we have the tendency
中要你去
to promote certain programs, but this may not be from God.
这个雄心勃勃
Sometimes, even though our hearts are burned with fire, with passion,
越大可能
sometimes we have a broad, big heart, but it's a contrast, a conflict with God.
跟人家吵，你这个去到小组，人家不能够接纳你的建议，你就说没有人愿意聆听我的意见虽然你雄心勃勃，那又怎么样？
So sometimes our hearts are full of passions, but we must think what are
一切都是非常的自我。
the reason that we emphasize on those ministries.
我们
And what is the source of our strength?
事工之前，必须要先认清我们衔接哪一个
So we must
资源
make it clear
之后
which resources that we are trying to connect.
挑战我们的教会
And fourthly, it's holy living life.
上帝有强稳健康的关系。
We must emphasize on the relationship with God.
圣洁生活，我想这里我就不多讲了。最后一点，第三点就是我们的建筑师要应用适应性和仆人式的领导。
So, as a builder,
and servanthood leadership
we must have servanthood, leadership, and adaptive. So many church has survived through the many years. So if your church is still very strong, but perhaps we have not noticed the river, just like the bridge earlier on, the example that bishops have given, has changed directions. So sometimes, if our church is no longer connect with our society, that is also a big tragedy. So only those who really love God, that we can really respond to God's calling. So it has been more than 18 years. It has been 18 years since this pandemic. And we see there are still some churches, leaders, pastors who have not made adjustment due to this pandemic. And they are still waiting for this pandemic to be over. There was once during a meeting, I can't stand anymore. So I emphasize that we can no longer say we wait until the pandemic is over. We wait until the pandemic over, then we will think about it. So Bishop says that we never know when will this pandemic be over. So now is the opportunity. Now is the time. How much do you can do? Make use of it. Don't think about wait until the pandemic is over and go back to the old norm. So at times our old norm will not come back anymore. So we need leaders who have courage to rise up to lead. We need leaders who are flexible, who are able to adapt to different challenges. If we are not able to make adjustment or to build new relationship, if we still hold on to the old way of doing things, before I end, I need to make this remark. If we continue to resist change, and we will have self-satisfied, if we compromise, if we look at the book of Revelations, compromise is one of the causes that the church fall. So there's another author that emphasizes. So that he emphasized that the effectiveness of a pastor's serving is based on the relevant, how relevant it is for pastors to serve. So sometimes we think that when we resume physical meeting, will our members come back to serve? So there are times we need to reflect upon ourselves. So according to this author, it says that people are still wanting to go back to physical meeting to attend worship. So as a pastor, our preaching, we must understand and be sensitive towards the context of our members. and be faithful in preaching the word of God. So no matter how, because of this pandemic, people will still wanting to hear the sermon. Those pastors who are irreplaceable are those pastors who have deep connections and relationship with their members. So this post-pandemic, so he predict that people will still wanting to have that real relationship and connections with God. So that is why we need servanthood leadership. We need servanthood leadership. So what is servanthood leadership? So in this book, learn to be like Jesus about servanthood. So it is from serving ourselves to serving others. When you understand that your life is about giving others, it's not about receiving from others, then you have significant growth. Sometimes a child will only think of themselves. They are still not grown up. But when the mom notices that the children can think for other people, when the children can think of other siblings, so now these children has grown up. From the angle of the spiritual aspect, it is the same. What is servanthood leadership? It's not about serving ourselves, but we are giving our life, serving society, and love our neighbor. Some food for thoughts. So this is the ultimate calling. How can we change being the salt and light of the world and bringing changes to the world? So we need to look beyond our visions of our authority. We don't just think of the entitlement that's been given by the church, but we need to keep our eyes. We need to look beyond this. We need to look upon the God that has called us and carry his burden. So we must do church discipleship. How can we train our members to be the disciples of Christ so that they can continue to disciple to others? Thirdly, we must arrange for opportunity. Is our serving clear, systematic, and provide training? And we need to think about our next generations. When we think about, when we say servanthood leadership, what comes into your mind? And the culture of our team. So this is my ending, a quote by Henry Nouwen. So he says that the future leaders of the church has to listen to God's voice, no one can be sure that when this endemic will be over. But one thing for sure, after this endemic, the whole world is going to be a very different world. So we need to accept changes. So we must learn to make changes. pastors, churches is the same. When we are a bridge that doesn't connect, this is not our calling. We must be a renewed church to connect man with God. We must continue to renew ourselves and learn to be like Jesus. Have courage and be humble to be prepared so that we can lead people fully unto Christ. So this is my summary. Apart from connecting people, we need to change to connect. Is there any way that we need to change in order that we can connect with people better? So there are times, even some changes that you are not willing to change in order to win more souls. Secondly, we need to connect with God. And the Bible makes it very clear, we must rest, seek upon the Lord, so that we can be strengthened by Him. So the second point here is rest to connect. And thirdly, we need some skills, and we must also connect with a humble heart to serve. So how do we connect? We serve to connect.
This is my message. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bishop Lau, for sharing your heart with us. This is your maiden address, first address, trembling address, but very clear address. Yeah, in the midst of the challenges we are faced with, we cannot want to do things like the way we have done before, and at the same time, we cannot be waiting for everything to become back to like before in order to do the work. So there's a whole lot of challenging thoughts that Bishop Lau has put forward to us as to how we will be, firstly, and as a result, how we will do ministry. Yeah, and so the leaders must be discerning. The church must be adaptable, okay, in order to be able to move forward. Now, we thank Bishop Lau for the address. Now, are there any clarification anybody want to ask, or you have questions that you want to put forward